Why do so many children, and even a good number of adults, end up getting their tonsils removed? That persistent sore throat that just won't go away no matter how much medicine you take. Eventually, it leads to surgery, just so you can go back to living normally. And after the anesthesia wears off and you're left with a mild sore throat, there's one sweet reward waiting for you: lots and lots of ice cream to help you heal. But have you ever wondered in the middle of the night, what are tonsils exactly? Why do we even have them if we end up removing them anyway? Do they serve any purpose, or are they just there to annoy us? And most importantly, what's the deal with eating cold stuff like ice cream after the surgery? Welcome to Midnight Reflections, where curiosity never sleeps. Don't forget to support us with a like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's find out. Tonsil removal is one of the most common surgical procedures performed around the world. In fact, it's considered one of the quickest and easiest operations for both doctors and patients alike. And maybe it's so well known because so many people go through it, either in childhood or during early adulthood. But before we dive deeper, let's answer the basic question. What are tonsils anyway? Tonsils are clusters of lymphatic tissue located on both sides of the back of your throat. They're actually really easy to spot. Just ask someone who still has them to open their mouth wide, and you'll likely see two round bumps at the top of the throat. The word tonsils actually comes from the Latin word tonsilli, meaning little almonds. Now, you might be thinking, do they even matter? Are they just useless leftovers from evolution? Well, here's the twist. Tonsils play a very important role in defending your body. For a long time, people believed tonsils were just pointless tissue, and sadly, many still think that today. But in reality, that couldn't be further from the truth. Now imagine this with me. A giant city, full of treasures: gold, jewels, money, fancy cars, pool tables, and all kinds of valuable stuff. Naturally, we want to protect it, right? So what do? We build a huge wall around the entire city. And not just that. We also place soldiers all throughout the city to guard it. But then we run into a serious problem. The city wall has large gates and openings, wide open without any cover. Enemies could easily sneak through those gates and threaten the safety of everything inside. Worse yet, they could just stand at the gates and attack the soldiers inside, firing arrows or launching projectiles at them. Now, we can't just shut these gates completely because we still need them to bring in the good stuff, right? So, what's the solution? Simple. We place elite soldiers right at the gates. We arm them with cannons and weapons. And the moment an enemy gets too close, they strike, protecting the city from any potential threat. That's exactly what your tonsils do. Let me break it down for you. You are the city. Your immune system is the army inside. And the tonsils? They're the soldiers standing at the gates, right at the openings to your body, your mouth and nose. Your nose and mouth are constantly exposed, wide open doors for bacteria and viruses. They're the main entry points for most infections. And if you can fortify these two gateways with well-armed guards, you're giving your internal organs, especially your lungs and digestive system, a huge break. Tonsils are the first line of defense. They attack invading germs the moment they enter through the mouth or nose. They even produce a special fluid, lymphatic fluid, which actively fights off infections and harmful intruders. In other words, they stop the enemy before it gets anywhere near your lungs. But then, why do we even remove them? Well, it's not really something we want to do. In most cases, we only remove the tonsils when we absolutely have to. You see, during childhood, especially the early years, tonsils face wave after wave of bacteria and viruses. They fight hard to protect the body, but sometimes, some of these infections are just too stubborn. And what happens then? The tonsils start to wear out. They get inflamed, swell up significantly, and start causing the child a lot of pain and discomfort. Eventually, doctors may have no choice but to remove them entirely, just to stop the constant infections and let the child live a normal, pain-free life. So, here's a curious question. Does everyone have to get their tonsils removed? Not at all. In fact, many people go their entire lives with their tonsils perfectly intact. How? Well, simply because they haven't been exposed to a lot of viruses or bacterial infections, at least not the kind that overwhelm the tonsils. So their tonsils remain healthy, and there's no need to take them out. It's also worth mentioning, as we grow older, our tonsils naturally shrink. Their role becomes less important over time because, guess what? Your immune system gets stronger as you age. That's why tonsils are especially important during childhood. In those early years, your body is vulnerable and still learning how to fight. The tonsils are like temporary frontline defenders. But once your immune system matures, you don't rely on them as much. Now here's a fun twist. How many tonsils do you think you have in your body? Most people would say 2, of course. But actually, you've got more than that. There are 3 types of tonsils in your body. The pharyngeal tonsils, those are the ones we've been talking about so far, at the back of your throat. Then you've got the palatine tonsils. These sit higher up in the nasal cavity. And finally, the lesser-known lingual tonsils, located at the base of your tongue. So, let's go in order and break it down. What exactly are these different types of tonsils? We already talked about the pharyngeal tonsils, but now let's meet their cousin, the palatine tonsils, found deeper in your nasal cavity. This one's a bit tricky, so let me explain. This lymphatic tissue sits right at the top of your airway, behind your nose. It's commonly known as the adenoid, and it's quite similar to the pharyngeal tonsils in structure. But it lives in a completely different location. Now here's the cool part. This is the same adenoid you hear about in that classic phrase, "He had his tonsils and adenoids removed." Yep, that's it. Adenoids don't get as much attention, but they are just as important as your regular tonsils. They stand guard at one of the most vulnerable gates of the body, right inside the nose. They're exposed to germs and bacteria all the time, and as you'd expect, they often get swollen and inflamed, especially during childhood. As they grow larger, they can start blocking your nasal airways. And that leads to a problem. When your nose is blocked, you start breathing through your mouth. And breathing through your mouth means that air, cold, dry, and dirty, goes straight into your lungs. Not ideal for your respiratory system. That's why doctors sometimes have to remove the adenoids too. But make no mistake, if they're inflamed, it's because they've been fighting hard. They've been in a non-stop war against invading germs. Now, here's the fascinating part. Unlike the regular tonsils, adenoids naturally stop growing around age 10. And after that, they slowly start to shrink until they vanish completely. No surgery needed, no medication. They just fade away on their own. Like a temporary bodyguard whose mission was to protect you during your most vulnerable years. Once you're stronger, once your immune system can handle things on its own, they simply disappear, quietly, without drama. The third type. It's called the lingual tonsils. These guys live deep in your mouth, right at the back of your tongue in the final third. They stay with you for life, and unlike the others, they're rarely ever removed. But make no mistake, they're still part of your immune army. They're made of lymphatic tissue too, and they can absolutely fight off bacteria and germs if needed. Now here's a funny little fact. According to statistics, about 30% of American children have their tonsils removed. But here's the shocking part. Only about 2% of them actually need the procedure. Yep. A kid gets a sore throat? Boom, off to the doctor. Parents go, take those tonsils out. But the truth is, tonsils should only be removed when they're truly causing serious problems. As long as they're doing their job, even a little bit, they deserve to stay. Now, here comes the sweetest part of the story. Why do we eat ice cream after getting our tonsils removed? Cold treats help shrink blood vessels, keeping bleeding under control. Plus, they keep your throat moist and cool, which helps reduce pain and inflammation. And who doesn't want a medical excuse to eat endless ice cream? Remember, like, share, and subscribe. Now you know. Got more midnight questions? Drop them in the comments. Stay curious, and I'll see you in another Midnight Mystery.